everybody. Welcome to another edition of our LifeQuest Leadership Line. Today, we have a chiropractor with us from the East Coast. We're bi-coastal right now. Dr. Scott Rosa. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Good to see you.
A pleasure.
And I know our viewers are going to love our interview today. Just a little bit about Dr. Rosa, about Scott. 1987, Palmer grad, 33 years in practice. Big number, 33 years, very relevant to what we do in chiropractic, right? And interesting, the last 22 years, he's been involved very, very heavily and getting heavier, right? I would say, right, Scott, in research, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You're doing, it's just beautiful. He started off as an HIO practitioner, and then moved over into the Atlas orthogonal, and so he's always been doing upper cervical work. But you know how Scott works is any chiropractic, as long as it works, that's where he comes from. But kind of let's get into it, Scott. Let's dive right into the meat. Listen, I know you've got an amazing practice, and you know I know it's very you've got people, you get all kinds of things. You're working in different locations. Share with us what your week looks like.
So I've evolved to what I would call kind of a boutique practice. We actually had to stop taking local patients unless it's friends or family from established patients that we've certainly acquired over the years, because about 80% of my practice is what we call complex cases. So these are cases that we'll call into our office that come in from out of state or out of the country. I might have mentioned that we get a lot of patients in from Canada, believe it or not, but we also get patients in from the UK and Australia and Sweden, and I mentioned Saudi Arabia, Dubai. So how my week works is that on Monday, I work a full day, Tuesday full day, and then I work half day Wednesday morning. Then Wednesday afternoon, I run around doing my domestic stuff, going to the dry cleaner, getting prepared. And then I have to be up 4 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, and then I drive 2.5 hours up to Latham, New York, which is a suburb of Albany. In Albany, there is an upright MRI facility. It's called Pinnacle Upright MRI. And that's where I meet the patient. And my lead into the patient is we don't accept any patient. We have to do a vetting. So when a patient contacts us about consideration of scanning and treatment, we go ahead and we do a history. I go ahead and I like to have prior imaging to see if I think the patient is a candidate. We don't want to bring someone in from out of state or out of the country if we don't think we can be of help. Right. So when I meet them there, I go ahead and I bring them in. I physician direct every scan that's performed at that center. I have patented a imaging method that took me 20 plus years to perfect. I have a patented treatment method. I actually have, it's called the image guided Atlas treatment. I still use x-ray from an upper cervical perspective, as all of us do, but I now have diverted over to also using the MRI images that I acquire, and I use those images to acquire the angles and vectors that I need to make the adjustment.
So Scott, let me ask you a question. Let me back up. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're where?
I'm in my Rock Hill office. Rock Hill, New York is in the Catskill Mountains. I'm about 20 minutes from where the original Woodstock Rock Festival was. And I was there in 1969. I'm giving away my age, man.
All right, I love it. And Dirty Dancing, right? Dirty Dancing?
And Dirty Dancing. So Dirty Dancing was filmed in the Carolinas, but it was based on a hotel called the Grossinger's Hotel. Right. So I live in the Catskill Mountains. That's where my office is located. So we were known for being a place where we had a lot of hotels. The Grossinger's Hotel is where I put myself through undergrad school to get to chiropractic college. And the Grossinger's Hotel is where Dirty Dancing's movie was based on.
That's great. That's great. So when you go over to Albany, that area there, right? And you have the clinic set up there, you have the MRI center set up that you're basically a director of when you're there, right? They do everything you want to do. And the imaging that you talked about, because we've seen you with the wave, and you know, I know you lecture all over the world, showing the imaging with the CSF flow. Mm-hmm. You know, that's the stuff that you're talking about, right? That you developed and patented.
Yes. Well, so what I do is that technicians, respectfully, are not trained in the neuroanatomy, the biomechanics of cervical spine, craniocervical junction, brain, and so forth as we are. So I physically have created an algorithm of how to place the stack of slices, orientation and stack of slices, to look at the structures that we need to find out about to help us not only understand the upper cervical misalignment, but I'm able to understand and connect the dots of the pathophysiology that might be contributing to the patient's ill health and dysfunction. Right. So I physician direct every scan. I literally set every slice and stack for each case. I position the patient in the scanner. I didn't invent the CSF flow software, but I did co-develop it. Interesting story. So Phonar Corp, the people that create the upright MRI, they started to make a CSF flow software in 1998 for Dr. Milrod at the Chiari Institute. And they never took an interest in it, so it sat on a shelf collecting dust. So one night, I had discovered low-lying tonsils in patients involved in whiplash back in 2005. It led to our paper that we released in 2010, which has been very well received. So one night I was scanning a patient after seeing all these low-lying tonsils, and I said to the engineer, I wonder what it's doing to the CSF flow. He said, you know, Doc, Phonar started making the CSF flow software. You ought to call him up and ask if you can get access to it. So I made the best decision I could. I called up the inventor of the MRI's son, Jevin Damadian, who's my best friend and colleague. And I said, Jevin, Paul, the engineer, tells me you guys got a software. I think I have use for it. He goes, all right, let's call up tomorrow. Let's see if we can get it for you. Called up the next day and spoke to a guy named David Chu. He's the engineer, the scientist that invented it. He's Asian, and I get on the phone, and Jevin says, hi, David, it's Dr. Rosa and me. We want to know, Dr. Rosa thinks he has a use for your CSF software. Can you help us out? And he said, well, I'm busy. I have other projects. And you hear a pause in the phone. And he goes, am I to assume this is a sentiment of your father, which is the inventor of the MRI and the owner of Phonar? And luckily, Jevin said yes. So the next week, the CSF flow software came up to us. It took us 1.5 years to perfect it.
And our viewers have not seen it.
Right.
It is incredible. I mean, it is you actually see the CSF flowing from the brain down through the atlas, through this, bathing the spinal cord, right? And if there's interference, you can actually see it being interfered with. And then post correction, you just see it flow. It's amazing stuff.
It's real live in vivo movies of physiology or pathophysiology. And I'm honored to your point to say, as of yet, doesn't mean it won't happen, but as of yet, I've never taken a patient, pre-scanned them, rendered, and to your point before, I have our adjusting instrument is right on the premise of the imaging center. So I get to scan them. It takes about 2 hours. I adjust them. I rest them for about 15 minutes, maybe 20, and then put them right back in the scanner. So we're getting literally the same day, within an hour, we're getting the post-scan. And as I say, I've yet to this point have not seen a case that didn't show improvement in CSF flow to varying degrees after an atlas adjustment.
That's incredible. And we were talking, about what you want to start doing up in your clinic, right? And I'd love you to share with our viewers, how that transpired, what you're making, like the Mayo Clinic of Chiropractic kind of thing.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, thank you. So one of the reasons I had better things to do than to go down a 20-plus year journey. I've spent over $700,000 of my own money to go along this journey, because when I was about first few years in practice, I got tired of patients that were involved in head and neck trauma coming back with an MRI radiologist report that said normal. I knew there was a disconnect, meaning I knew the patient was suffering, but the MRI wasn't sensitive enough or specific enough to show the connection of why they didn't feel well. So that's when I went about the process of trying to figure out how can I go ahead and create an environment to help people that have been Mayo Clinic and all over the country having 3, 4, 5 MRIs coming back normal, but yet they were suffering. So I was then invited to meet the inventor of the MRI, and graciously, another true story for the records. So I was introduced to him, and I was using DMX at the time, digital motion X-ray, to demonstrate instability. So I was asked to come and meet with him, and I demonstrated a C1 unilateral atlas fracture that didn't show up on MR or CT. So he said to me, how can I help? And I said, well, at that time, the state of the art of imaging was very insufficient. We had cadaver studies showing that ligaments would tear and bleed and so forth, but it wasn't showing up on that process at that time. So I asked him, can you help us develop more sensitive means to look at structures that are very small? By the way, I spent 1.5 years in the cadaver labs, cutting people up to get a better understanding of these structures, to know how to slice through them. I actually did dissection down at Albert Einstein Medical Center. Wow. I was invited down as the head of the anatomy department at Albert Einstein Medical Center, was on the New York State Chiropractic board. So he was a great fan of chiropractic. You would love it. my colleague that introduced me to him, who was also on the New York State Chiropractic Board, when we went down to do dissection, the head of the anatomy department said, if you want to know about spinal anatomy, these are the guys that you ask. So these are med students, and when we started doing a dissection, they were all coming over asking us, and where are the dentate ligaments, and where's the vertebral artery? It was awesome. It was what a great opportunity. So with that said, I knew I was in trouble and had to build an arc from scratch. So Damadian said, bring down some patients, we'll see what we can do to help. So the following week, I brought 3 patients down to be scanned, and I knew I was in trouble when the tech put the patient in the scanner. Up to that point, all I ever did was order an MRI. I didn't know anything about running it. So the tech looks at me after he puts the patient in and said, well, what do you want to look at? I said, the alar ligaments. He goes, what are they and where are they? Serious. Dr. Damadian is not a radiologist, the inventor of the MRI. He is an internist, so he points mid-cervical. I'm going, oh, Jesus, I'm going to have to build this thing from scratch. And that's when I went along this long journey to figure out how to best look at these structures that are very small, how do you best image them, how do we get to clarity and so forth. So as I said, so this has all been a process of exploration and discovery. So the CSF finally, we went ahead after a year and a half, we got it to work. And since then, Fonard then, they were watching what I was doing, and Fonard said, hey, we got to keep an eye on him. He might be onto something. And now, of course, the company supports the fact of the CSF being so wonderful.
And share with our audience, I know that you saw a patient that had amazing results, and they really want to support your research and support, I know you have a foundation. Tell us about that. Tell the viewers about that.
Yeah. So I think about, 8-9 years ago, we created a not-for-profit, a 501(c) called the Trauma Imaging Foundation, and that became our resource to try to raise funding to do research. If you're not aware, when I do research at the facilities that I work at now, it's very expensive. It costs me $7,000 per day just to rent the scanner. That doesn't include all the other expenses. So research is very expensive. And again, I mentioned a lot of research that I've done up to this point, I've self-paid for. So what happens is that we went ahead and had a patient, his son had been institutionalized. He tried to commit suicide. And ultimately he got out of the institution, started going ahead and having a flare-up again, and then he went back in. So back to the not-for-profit. So this not-for-profit has been our basis of trying to raise funding for research. So the great news is about 10 weeks ago, I had a gentleman who is pretty close to being a billionaire, and he was able to get his son out of the institution, brought him up to Latham where we got the scanner. I scanned him, found the observation of his problem. Mind you, I have a neurologist colleague, a concussion specialist, who did a telemedicine conference with him because he was on excessive antipsychotic, anti-anxiety. They made him into a zombie. I mean, it was terrible when you first met him. And she was all ready to start shifting him into different medication routes to try to ease him off. So we bring him up, scanned him, brought him back, adjusted him. And the first thing he said to me, he said, oh God, I had a Jim McMahon flush. Not everybody gets it. Please, we don't want to be misdirecting. Some people get that flush, some people don't. Essentially, when we adjusted him, the CSF just started moving real well. Put him back in the scanner. The post-scan was absolutely exponentially improved. He comes in on Sundays. I meet him on a Sunday. His improvement is exponential. He has returned back to function. He went ahead and said, would you like me to give you the credit card for the visit? I said, sure. And I go, you need to go to get your wallet? He goes, no, I can remember it now. He was able to remember his credit card number. I can't remember mine. So with that said, his father wanted to come up to get scanned. So when his father came in, he walked in the room up in Latham and he said, you saved my son's life. He goes, I want to fund your research and I want to fund future projects that you might have in mind. He said, how much do you need? I said, well, the research is going to be about $200,000. He said, you'll hear from my secretary this week. By the following week, they direct deposited the $200,000 in our account. Then what happened was he came back in for a checkup and he said, how much is an upright MRI? I said, it's about $2 to $2.2 million new. He said, well, can you buy one used? I said, well, I think they're selling refurbished ones for about $800,000 or $900,000. He said, I want to fund your own imaging center. And he goes, my son, my daughter, my wife, and my other daughter are the people that run our not-for-profit. He goes, we donated $5 million last year to a hospital, $3 million to another thing. He goes, we have decided we want to fund your visions for the future. So we've just been given the okay to go look for property or rental space. We're going to go ahead and get our own upright MRI. Our vision, to the point we discussed earlier, is so many people have things that might need more than just an MRI. We know sometimes CT is important. We know sometimes brain DTIs are important. Unfortunately, the upright MRI is not powerful enough to do a DTI. So what we've decided is we want to have a center of excellence, what we're going to call the Mayo Clinic, so to speak, where people will be able to come in from all around the world and country. If they've been unsuccessful getting a good diagnosis, we're hoping to have a center where we'll have all the different modalities. We'll have a DMX, CT fluoro, cone beam CT, upright, recombinant MR, and it'll be a place of excellence where we'll be able to go ahead and render great diagnosis, and then obviously have chiropractic right on premise. And then the future goal, again, with the patents that we have, in my first patent, we have automating software. I can only be in one place at one time. He wants to fund development of the software because in the future, our goal is, like the aiming clinics, they have centers strategically around the country. There will, hopefully of prayer, we will have one in your state.
That's incredible.
And we're going to need chiropractors trained to do the IGAT things and the work that we're doing. So obviously we're going to look to affiliate with your blessings. But ultimately the goal would be to have a center of excellence. We'll get it up and running in New York. It'll be, instead of me having to drive 5 or 5.5 hours round trip, it'll be 20 minutes from my office.
Yeah. And
we'll be able to have,
Scott, what it reminds me of is the B.J. Palmer Clinic, back in the early, in the 1900s, where even Dr. Mayo came over there, right? But he had a state-of-the-art clinic where people were coming, and chiropractors were sending cases that they weren't getting results on, right? Whether they were full spine, didn't matter if they were doing HIO, whatever. They'd send them over, they'd work with them, and they'd send them back, right? Right. Same kind of thing, right?
Yeah. What I've learned in all the years and all the complex cases we treat, these patients come in. The best part of my job that I have to do, other than rendering an upper cervical adjustment, is I give people the dignity of a diagnosis. When I go in and tell them, I'm pretty sure I found out when you say it hurts here, I found on the MRI and the CSF flow that you got a pulsatile pattern that's inflammatory, more likely is at the root of why it hurts here. When I tell people we have found their problem, most of them go to tears of joy because we've given them the dignity of a diagnosis, and they look at me and they start tearing up. They go, you mean I'm not crazy? No, you never were. Then I go ahead and do what I find to be the most honorable thing. I always tell them, and they get more tears. I said to them, if anyone has ever minimized your pain and suffering, if anyone has ever said to you that they think you're crazy and it's in your head, I said, you tell them to call me, and I said, I'll take the bullet for now, and I'll explain the problem to them. Yeah. We're the best positioned profession in the world. There is no one that can compete with our knowledge of musculoskeletal system, spinal biomechanics, neuroanatomy, neurovascular anatomy. We're going to be learning more about flow dynamics, obviously, as we continue with the research of CSF. It couldn't be a better time to be a chiropractor.
Oh, I agree. And Scott, I don't know if you coined the term, but you were the first person I heard it from years ago. That we talk about head traumas, concussions, things like that. Where I heard it from you, where you said that you cannot have a head trauma without having a neck trauma.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And it makes so much sense, right? I mean, how can you have a skull issue, right, getting a concussion or something happening without it affecting the craniocervical joint, right?
Right. To that point, it's simple. Any of us can sit in the room of all medical doctors and explain it in a very simple format. The head is a bowling ball. The atlas weighs 2 ounces. There's already a disrelationship of mass to size of a 2-ounce bone holding a 14-pound mass head on average. We have the most amount of range of motion between C1 and C2. Atlas and C1 are basically kind of working together. They do misalign. But the point is that the biomechanical risk of hitting the head without adversely affecting the upper cervical area is very, very less than much, meaning that it's hard to hit the head without adversely affecting the neck. And this is the missing component that the medical profession, I think, has fallen short on. No fault of theirs. This is not their area of expertise. I don't know if I shared with you, but we had a woman call me up. Her husband died in 2015. His name is Fred McNeil. And Fred McNeil led an illustrious career as a football player. Then he became an attorney. In his last 3 years of his life, this will resonate with you guys. Last 3 years of his life, he suffered from severe debilitating pain. They claim he had ALS. They claim he had CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So his wife called me up after his passing, and I said, why are you calling me? She said, because Bennett Omalu was my husband's doctor. And when Bennett Omalu did his autopsy, he found pathology in the neck. Wow. He said, she called me because I'm the one that's been doing the research with the craniocervical junction and neck. And I think we might have opened up an opportunity for there to be more looking into the area that we're claiming that is difficult to not malalign upon trauma. Absolutely.
And for our listeners and viewers, if you don't know who Bennett Omalu is, and we have Bennett Omalu at the Wave, Bennett Omalu is who Will Smith played in the movie Concussion, right? And he's a brilliant man. He basically coined the term. He was the first person to actually do, open up the brain of an NFL football player, Pittsburgh Steelers football player, and was able to see what was called CTE, right? He coined the term CTE. Doing amazing work in concussions. He's a great guy. He's over here in Chico, or somewhere close to us here. Scott, I'm just, for all of us, it's just so cool to have someone like you doing the work you're doing, the passion you have for chiropractic, and the passion you have to help people for research and doing the things that are happening. It's just amazing. And I've always been of the standpoint, every technique works. I mean, we know that. Every technique works, But I do think that one of the things, and my wife and I have always practiced this. I mean, the last, I'm going on 40 years. But my wife she's probably about 33, 34 years like you. The big thing about it is that we still have to understand what's happening at the most neurologically embedded area, and that's the upper cervical area. Whether you do upper cervical or not, right? We have to know that. And you know this at Life West, we teach the most amount of upper cervical probably than any other college, in the world, I would like to say, but maybe not, but I'd like to say we do. And nothing against other colleges, of course.
No, of course.
It's so important to know that. And when our students leave, whether they're doing upper cervical, doing full spine, they still understand what's happening there.
Yeah, to your point, Ron, chiropractors started using X-ray before anybody else. I think it was at 1911 or 1918, I think we started using X-ray. And X-ray serves us and we continue to serve us, and we need X-ray. What the MRI did is X-ray shows bone. We understand by our teachers in your wonderful college, we learn about neuroanatomy, we learn about neurovascular anatomy, we do dissection. What I've been able to do is I've been able to bridge using MRI, not just to look for pathology, but to look for pathophysiology.
Yeah.
I've been making discoveries. You'll see some of the new ones when I come, God willing, we meet in August. I keep discovering things that we can never see before on standard MRI and X-ray. What we're learning about, what we're seeing on the MRI, we can teach and educate our chiropractor, profession. And as you've always heard me say, I don't care how you get it in that area, as long as you do it well. The importance is to understand the implications of what a misalignment in the upper cervical area is capable of doing. And when you know what it's capable of doing, then it can go ahead and help us further understand what we need to do to learn better, how to understand the implications of the misalignment, and then obviously over time learn how to help us correct it better. I have to tell you, when I started using MRI as a guide, as a roadmap, along with the X-ray, I still do pre-X-rays, I still do upper cervical pre and post X-rays in my my orthogonal program, but the MRI has become really my roadmap. And I can't tell you how much I've learned about mechanisms of misalignment. To be honest with you, I've learned that the atlas is moving not in any different way, but it is moving a little bit different than any of the other programs that we've been taught, because we were never able to see thin slicing through that area. Exactly. When we look at a frontal X-ray, we know if it's gone right or left. We look at a base posterior vertex, we know if it's anterior posterior, but we can't see the disrelationship between COC1 on an X-ray. Yeah. We see that on MR. I'll demonstrate that when I come out. Hopefully the people on today will join us at the Wave. But I'm learning how to better adjust and correct those misalignments, because the MRI show me little things and little tweaks that are helping me with my corrections.
Yeah, you know what I love to hear? I love to hear someone that I consider an expert like yourself, right? You've been doing this. People are finding all over the world. You get great results. You got research to back it up. And an expert that I will call an expert, and you're still learning. And that's what it's about, right? Because we're still progressing with technology, everything we have available to us. It's incredible. And I love that you just painted what the future looks like. You know,
Ron, any chiropractor that thinks they got it all, like Dr. Sweat says, every time we think we got it, we ain't got it.
Yeah.
We're students for life. The good thing about what I get to do is I get to go ahead and look at, when I see patients every week in Latham, I'm there to diagnose and correct them and so forth. But I'm also doing research every single case that I've done. Every single case I can learn something. Yeah. I will see an observation and I'll go, I wonder if that was there before. And I'll go back 5 years or 10 years ago and pull up an MRI from 5 or 10 years ago. And that observation was there 5 or 10 years ago. I just didn't understand its implication. And that leads me, I'm an empiricist. When I see something, I go, I wonder if, and I wonder what the implications are, and I wonder how we can do something to help it. So I'm learning as we go along, and we'll never have enough knowledge because we're always going to have to seek to get better at what we do.
And technology is pushing us there too, which is, if we use it, right, which is phenomenal. And, you know,
and technology can't stop. One of my future visions is when we build this center of excellence, we'll be able to have the funding at some point. We'll be able to get more funding. Because I'm a user of an MRI, I don't own an MRI, but because I've used it so extensively, I'm an end user. So I know what's good about MRIs and I know what's not. I know where there's shortfalls and I know where it can be helped. So my thing is, I'm a geek. I got all this stuff in my head from observation, and I can foresee in the future, we can create more high definition coils. We'll be able to see things better as time goes on because technology is catching up and giving us an opportunity to expand our ability to do and see things that we couldn't see before.
Yeah.
So we never stop.
Absolutely. And Scott, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing and will continue to do. And for our listeners, I know that there's a couple of websites, right?
Yes.
Your clinic website is Rosa.
rosaclinic.com.
Uh-huh. And how about the foundation?
The other one is traumaimagingfoundation.com. That's our not-for-profit foundation website. That's where we rely on funding to help drive all the great stuff that we get an opportunity with your gracious invitation to me to visit your wonderful college to share with all the chiropractic students and chiropractors that attend the way.
Right.
And we're honored to be there. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Now, and our producer, Shane, is going to put that on the bottom for everyone. So please go visit that. If you get a chance anywhere in the world, Scott will be at the Wave in August. If you're going to be there, you're going to hear a phenomenal talk. If not, I know you're all over the country. If you have a chance, go see him because he's just incredible. And I want to also thank you. I know you're part of the ICA Upper Cervical Council. You know Jeff Schulten, who Jeff's now a teacher at the college. He flies down from Calgary doing great work, and with Julie Mayer Hunt. All these people coming together in the upper cervical world, and it's not about upper cervical, it's about chiropractic. And that's what I love, and Roy Sweat. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. All that you shared, the wisdoms of, pearls of wisdoms that you dropped on us today. It's just amazing. And you want to say last?
Yes. Thank you again. It was an honor to be here today with you and all the viewers. I would just like to say, as I've always said, I'm pretty sure anytime I've been honored to be invited to present with you guys, there has never been a better time to be in chiropractic. I know sometimes we get students. I know when I started chiropractic college in our first quarter, we had 300 students at the beginning of second, we had 180 left. Oftentimes some come to chiropractic school with a vision of what they think it might be, and it doesn't turn out as they hope or think. More often than not, I think it's because they don't want to do the due diligence of doing the work to become the chiropractor. So my point is that there has never been a better time to be in chiropractic. There has never been a better time to establish yourself as providing a service that no other medical profession in the world can provide. I once called up Dr. Sweat and I said to him, Dr. Sweat, who knows anatomy, physiology, pathoanatomy, neuroanatomy, who knows it better than an upper cervical practitioner or a chiropractor? And he paused a second, he goes, no one. I go, thank you, that's exactly my point. No medical physician knows it, and I've been honored to present. I get asked to present to medical facilities. Last year, I was invited to present to an orthopedic surgical group and neurosurgical group. It was supposed to be an hour, go to meeting. At the end of 2 hours, we finally went ahead and started to say goodbye. And they said, you know what, Doc? We were never taught this in school. So to the chiropractic profession, we hold information that the medical profession does not know. They're not trained in it. Doesn't make them bad. Doesn't make us better or them worse. But we hold something that is so precious. Our goal now is to continue through great education, getting out there, doing great work, making sure that we do good science, and eventually our work will absolutely speak for itself.
Absolutely.
Published a chapter. I don't know if I told you on it on this one. I'll send you the chapter. I was invited to publish in a medical book called Hydrocephalus, Water on the Brain. Medical chapter about hydrocephalus. I did a chapter. I presented the upper cervical model of why we think hydrocephalus is occurring based on misalignment, low-lying cerebellar tonsils, and CSF obstruction. We track the chapter every month, or I get an email every month. As of the end of 2 months ago, there's 6 chapters in the book. I'm the only chiropractor in that book. Out of the 6 chapters, our chapter was downloaded, that's just downloading, not buying the book, was downloaded over 8,000 times. In contrast, all the 5 other medical text chapters were downloaded between 275 and 475 times. It is resonating.
They want what we know. It's exactly it. And you said it cleanly. If we stay in our lane and do what we do, because what we do works, right? Do what we do and allow everybody else to do what they do. You know, we are the primary, you know, it's like, and we can prove it and you can prove it, right?
Absolutely.
What's there. So it's the certainty we have too. So thank you, Scott. I appreciate you and the work you're doing. For our listeners and our viewers, you know, try to see Scott sometime. Come to the Wave. You'll be able to see him. Scott, I appreciate your time. It's probably around noon or 1 o'clock, 1:30 your time. It's 10:30, 11 o'clock my time in the morning. Thank you for your time. And to our viewers, check back in with us for another Life West Leadership Line. We love and appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. Know that you are important. You make a huge difference in your community, and you don't even know the miracles you're creating because the people who didn't have your care could end up falling off a cliff somewhere, but because they're with you, they are progressing, they are living a fuller life, and that's really what it's about. So,
Ryan,
thank you.
Yeah, in ending, just remember, one day in practice, whether it be your students or practitioners involved, just remember, one day your adjustment might save someone's life, just like the upper cervical adjustment that I rendered to that gentleman's son saved his, and end up going ahead and furthering our profession. So get out there, adjust everyone you can, do it well, do it safely, do it efficiently, learn from the masters that come in your college that are great, great educators. And once again, Ron, thank you for having me. I wish everybody safe and well.
You are so welcome. And to our viewers, keep living your life from above down, inside out. And we'll be at you at the next Life West Leadership Line. Love and appreciate y'all.